Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our third and final webinar in the winter webinar series. Thanks so much for being a member, and thanks for all the ways that you support our work. Thanks for attending today, too. So I'll wait a couple more seconds and we'll let a few more people into the Zoom, but it's going to be a great webinar and you're going to really enjoy this. So just bear with us a few minutes and we'll let a few more folks into the room. And I guess in the interim, I just hope you're all enjoying these extra doses of sunshine. I know for me, when I'm done working now, I can go out hiking for a little bit. So really grateful for that extra bit of daylight, that's for sure. Okay, folks are still coming in, but a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, this webinar is going to be recorded and we will share it after. It'll be posted to the Bruce Trails YouTube channel, and then registrants will also be emailed a link. And then this webinar will be about 30 minutes, but we'll have lots of time for questions and answer. And Keith's ready to answer our great questions. And then just lastly, for troubleshooting, if you have any questions, just contact Ryan Mikaloff in the chat. So again, welcome everybody. It's going to be really great. Today we're going to be learning about the spring raptor migration in Southern Ontario at Beamer Conservation Area in Grimsby. And I've been myself. It's really spectacular. You should make it a point to go out and visit. And today I have the great pleasure of introducing our guest speaker. So Keith Dieroff started visiting Beamer Conservation in the 1990s while attending university. And after joining the Niagara Peninsula's Hawkwatch a few years later, he held several positions on the executive, including director, newsletter editor, treasurer, and president. And while working from Toronto and raising a family, Keith took a break from his active involvement, but has returned for a second term as president. And Keith is a passionate birder that's always had a soft spot for raptors, whether it's a sharp-shinned hawk at the backyard feeder or a bald eagle migrating over the treetops at Beamer. It never gets old. So thank you, Keith, for being with us, and over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Just speaking about the bald eagles, just as a little preview here, I was at Beamer a couple weeks ago, about 10 days ago, and I had a pair of grappling bald eagles flying through the sky, two adult birds flying through and kind of touching talons. So that is just a little preview of the kind of things that you might be able to see at the Niagara Peninsula Hawkwatch. So the Niagara Peninsula Hawkwatch takes place at Beamer Conservation Area. There is a beautiful section of the Bruce Trail that runs through the area, and it's a great reason to visit the site. And while you're there, you can check out the Niagara Peninsula Hawkwatch and learn a little bit about what we do. So I'll get you go to the next slide there, please, Ryan. Okay. So what is the Niagara Peninsula Hawkwatch? Back in the 1970s, the world had a problem with DDT, and some people in conservation started to notice that large raptors like bald eagles, peregrine falcons, and ospreys, they were starting to disappear, and they couldn't figure out why. It turns out DDT was contributing to eggshell thinning, and as a result, the reproductive success of many large raptors was affected, and they became less common. So a few people who were in the Niagara area around that time, they decided to, hey, we should get out and we should try to count these raptors to see if we can figure out, how bad this situation is, or how fast this decline is happening. So they went all over Niagara region, and they counted in different places. But when it came back to, the best place where they saw the most raptors in the spring, it turned out to be at Beamer Memorial Conservation Area. And there's some reasons why. And yeah, so this is Beamer Memorial Conservation Area, located on the escarpment just above the town of Grimsby. There's a beautiful waterfall there. If you do go hiking on the Bruce Trail there. But in terms of kind of why Beamer is a good place to look for hawks, it's the same thing with real estate. It's all about location, location, location. And what's happening is, raptors, when they're migrating, they like to conserve energy. And in order to do that, they take advantage of thermals, which is what happens when the ground becomes warm, heat rises, and the raptors use this rising heat to kind of just be lazy and set their wings and soar in a little bit of a circle and go up, and they go up and up and up, and then they glide. So what doesn't happen over water is, thermals don't exist. So raptors will typically only migrate over land so that they can take advantage of these thermals. And as they're migrating up from the south, they hit the bottom of Lake Erie, and then they typically fly along to the Niagara River. They cross over at the Niagara River. They look and they see the western edge of Lake Ontario, and they try to make a straight shot for the western edge of Lake Ontario. And when they do that, they end up flying right over top of Beamer Conservation Area more often than not. So that's why kind of the raptor migration is concentrated and seems to be happening more there, and that's why we set up shop in 1975 to start counting the raptors there. Okay, next slide. So the other thing that's happening at Beamer is there is a natural point, and you can see like birds love to travel in a straight line, so they will follow along the ridge of the escarpment. When they get into Grimsby, they get to a little dip there, and then you can see that there's a point at Beamer Memorial Conservation Area, and they will just kind of fly over the trees as a little bit of a shortcut. And you can see the red dot there is where we have set up shop, and they fly almost right over top of us. And that's why it's an excellent place for us to count the raptors. Okay. So how many might be the kind of obvious question. We've counted about 400,000 since 1991. I think probably if I updated that number, we might be closer to 500,000. On any given year, we typically see between 10,000 and 15,000 raptors over Beamer. We count officially from March 1st to May 15th. Some years, if it's a little bit warmer in February, we'll start a few days earlier. But the official count period is March 1st to May 15th. And you can see the chart here. The size of the bar is the number of raptors that you will typically see in any given month. And then the number is the number of species, so different types of raptors that you can see at Beamer. And as you can see, April is probably the best time to go, and it's one of the times that I enjoy most at Beamer. You can see the most raptors and the most diversity of species. So if you're thinking about making a trip, April is always a good time to go and check it out. All right, so what can you see at Beamer? The first type of hawks that we see at Beamer are bootios. So these are hawks that typically you will find soaring in the sky when they hunt. So they'll be soaring around in a little bit of a circle. And the two main types that we see at the Niagara Peninsula Hawkwatch are the red-tailed hawk. So you may often see these at the side of the road if you're driving down the highway, or if you're driving around kind of any rural area, you'll see them on the top of a post or maybe a fence post. So that is kind of the common roadside hawk, we would say. But the one that the Niagara Peninsula Hawkwatch is most famous for is the red-shouldered hawk. So the red-shouldered hawk is at the top of its breeding range in Ontario. So we don't have a lot of them in Ontario, but the ones that do breed in Ontario typically fly over Beamer in the spring, and we count them. So the red-shouldered hawk is always a special treat. Very beautiful hawk, and it's in the buteo family. And there's a couple more on the next slide. So the broad-winged hawk, is a little bit later of a migrant. So we don't typically see them till mid-April. And then when we do see them, they all come through in a group over a couple days. So hawks are typically solitary animals, but the broad-winged hawk is the one exception to this. And when they do come through, we can sometimes get what we call kettles, which are groups of hawks all flying together. And again, they're using those thermals, so they're swirling around, and sometimes you can get hundreds of broad-winged hawks in a thermal. The last boodio that we see is the rough-legged hawk. So this is a hawk that breeds in the high Arctic, and we get a few every year at Beamer, and they're always a treat. They come in two kinds. There's a light morph and a dark morph. What you're seeing here is a dark morph, a very pretty bird and always a treat to see. Okay. So the second kind of raptor that we see at Beamer are accipiters. So accipiters are the true hawks in that they eat mostly other birds. And if you could think about Jurassic Park, you know, the velociraptor, think of a tiny velociraptor with wings. You can see the talons that they have there. You know, very voracious predators, extremely effective, and they hunt on the wing a lot of times. So sometimes when we're at Beamer, we'll see them catch other birds, you know, just in the sky. And they're very effective at doing that. So there's a few types, and on the next slide, you can see there's two here that are called the Cooper's hawk and the sharp-shinned hawk. So very, very similar, almost impossible to tell apart in the field. There are a few little kind of cues that we use to tell what's a Cooper and what's a sharp-shinned, but they're very much the same, and size is one thing that we use, and also the shape of the tail as well. So those two we see quite a few of over the course of a season. And then there is, I think on the next slide, we have eagles. So as I mentioned, you know, we see a lot of bald eagles at Beamer. The problem that we have with bald eagles, though, is they've come back so well from DDT in the 70s that there are about 5 or 6 nesting pairs in the area. So there's some nesting eagles in Niagara Falls. There's also some Coots Paradise in Hamilton. So we have to be really careful that we're not double counting birds. And what we do is, you know, we look at a couple different things when we're counting eagles. If they're heading east to west and they're soaring, that's a pretty good indication that they're migrants. If they're heading west to east, we don't count them because typically those are the local birds kind of moving around. And then if we see behavior like I was describing earlier, where there are, you know, 2 eagles interacting in the sky and grappling, that's courtship behavior. So that is definitely local birds. So we won't count those either. Okay, next slide. So aside from the bald eagle, we do get a few golden eagles every year, usually between about 5 and 10. And they're always nice to see. Very similar to the bald eagle, but a little bit, you can see the tail is a little bit different. And they have a little bit different flight pattern as well. Okay, next slide. So this type of bird that we see, you know, falcons are among the world's fastest animals. If you're really lucky, you'll get to see a peregrine falcon at Beamer. Here's a beautiful picture of a peregrine. But on the next slide are the 2 most kind of common birds that we see at Beamer, the American kestrel and the merlin. Again, very similar in size, very similar in shape. Obviously some color differences. The American kestrel, very pretty, lots of orange and blue on it. The merlin a little darker, that kind of blue-gray on the back. You know, typically when we see them in the sky, we can tell them apart because the kestrels will be very light in color, and the merlins will be very dark in color. Okay. And if you're going to Beamer, to the Hawkwatch, this is probably the most common bird that you're going to see. It's the turkey vulture. Turkey vultures, when we started counting back in the 70s, you know, very rare. But over the past 50 years, they have really expanded their range northward to the point where they are the most common bird that we see at the Hawkwatch, you know, in recent years. So starting off with kind of a couple birds every year, we're up to sometimes between 6,000 and 7,000 turkey vultures per year. And the easiest way to kind of tell that it's a turkey vulture is you get a big black bird with that nice silver under the wings. And when they're kind of soaring in the sky, they kind of rock back and forth. So you can look for what we call the rocking V. Okay. So we do get a few ospreys every year. Ospreys are the only birds that will typically sometimes take a shortcut over water. So we don't get all the ospreys that are migrating. But the ones that do stay over land typically pass over over Beamer, and we get to count them. Typically, what people know these are as is the fish hawk. Sometimes, you know, when I meet older people, they will say, "Oh, it's a fish hawk," and indeed, their diet is almost 100% fish, and they do nest on lakes and near waterways. Okay. All right, and this is another one that has kind of an old-timey name as well. Northern harriers in the past used to be called marsh hawks. They typically breed in marshy areas, and we see them and count them as well, probably around 50 to 100 every year. And they come in 3 different colors as well. So the males are kind of white-gray, very pretty. We call them ghost hawks because they're kind of that white-gray color. And then we get the females, which are kind of brown and red. And then we get juveniles as well, which are very, very red and buffy. And from time to time, what we get at the Hawkwatch is something we don't expect. For example, every once in a while, we get a black vulture. So black vultures typically breed south of here. They've only recently started to expand into upper New York State. And in the last probably decade, we've been seeing maybe 1 or 2 a year. We're not sure if they're migrants or they could possibly be local birds, because we do know that there's a pair nesting around Lewiston area. So they may wander as far over as Beamer, but we do count them and make note of them. It's part of the citizen science that we do, is kind of counting birds and making note of stuff that's unusual or out of the ordinary. So the American goshawk is another one. It's an accipiter. It's the largest accipiter. In the past, we used to see more of these, similar to the rough-legged hawks. They breed in more northern areas, and because of climate change, American goshawks and rough-legged hawks don't often have to travel as far south as they used to. Back when winters were colder, they would leave the northern areas and kind of go to the northern United States and winter around Minnesota, New York, Pennsylvania. But the climate's just gotten warmer, and they don't need to go as far south. So we don't see as many of them as we used to. So these are the unexpected birds, but then sometimes we get what we call the mega rarities. On the left here, you'll see a swallow-tailed kite. In the entire 50 years of the Hawkwatch existence, we've had 1 swallow-tailed kite. So very uncommon, breeds in the southern US. Very strange for them to be seen kind of this far north. So that one is a mega rarity. We do get some western hawks as well. What you see here is a Swainson's hawk. So typically only found west of the Mississippi, but every once in a while, due to wind conditions or weather, it might push 1 or 2 birds over to the east, and they do kind of this long circuitous route to their breeding grounds in the west. And sometimes it takes them by Beamer Conservation Area, and we are lucky enough to count them. All right, so if you're visiting Beamer, come for the hawks. There's an official counter there every day from March 1st to May 15th. You can come and say hi, see what's flying over. You can come for a hike on the trails. There's beautiful sections of the Bruce Trail there. And while you're there, if you go to the next slide, you may see the tower. So you'll think to yourself, what's with the tower? And the reason we have the tower is that when we started counting back in 1975, there was almost no trees at Beamer. So we had a really good line of sight to the east and to the north. To the north, there's an abandoned quarry. So never used to be any trees there. We could see out to the lake and everything was great. But by the 1990s, the trees had grown and we couldn't see very well anymore from the ground. So we decided, you know what, we need to get up a couple stories. So we built the tower and now we do the official count from the tower from March 1st to May 15th. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the citizen science. We've been counting for 50 years, and our data has definitely helped identify some trends. You can see the population trend there for red-shouldered hawks and for northern goshawks. And as I mentioned, you know, the northern goshawks, we see fewer and fewer of those every year. But if you go to the next slide, there is some good news stories. So some of the species that have increased over those 50 years include the turkey vulture, the bald eagles, and the peregrine falcons have bounced back very nicely from DDT. And actually merlins are increasing as well. So those are kind of the ones that we see and have been able to identify positive trends. Unfortunately, we've also had to, you know, identify some not so good trends as well. A lot of raptor species are declining. The accipiters that I mentioned, the Cooper's hawks, the sharp-shinned hawks, kestrels are getting less common. That's probably due to changing land use. They're a rural bird that likes farm fields. There's fewer and fewer farm fields in agriculture around Ontario, so we see fewer and fewer kestrels. And harriers seem to be declining a bit as well. Marshlands are always in jeopardy and you know, in danger of disappearing. So the less marshland we have, the less harriers we have as well. So, okay. And if you're at Beamer, you can pick up one of our flight silhouette sheets. And if you're hiking around, you can kind of keep it handy so that you have an idea of what you might be seeing. You can look up and then use this sheet to try and identify the birds that are flying overhead. And then if you're techie, there's also a great app. It's called Hawkwatch International's Identification Guide to Raptors. It will give you most of the species that I identified today, and plus a bunch more. And you can learn about them. There's videos, more description. It's a perfect thing to have kind of handy if you're looking at hawks going overhead. Okay. And if you want more information about the Niagara Peninsula Hawkwatch, I encourage you to visit our website. You know, not a lot of stuff there, a lot of information about kind of the different raptors that we see. The news and events page, I have to admit that we're not really good at keeping that up to date, but you can definitely get more information about who we are and what we do. And then, of course, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority website has some great information about the site itself, which is Beamer Memorial. Hawkwatch.org is the website of Hawkwatch International, who creates that good app that I mentioned. And then, you know, for a much larger scale view of hawk migration, you can visit the Hawk Migration Association website. They compile all the data. The data that we collect, we enter into a database that is managed by the Hawk Migration Association. And they compile that data from all over North and South America to look at the kind of the continental trends for raptors, to identify, to see if, you know, the stuff that we're seeing locally is also happening kind of on a continental scale. And they do a lot of good work around that on something that's called the Raptor Population Index. And I don't know if you can read really well here, but in the top right-hand corner, there's a little button above the donate button that says Raptor Population Index. So you can click on that and learn about the status of kind of any of the species that I've talked about and what it looks like across North and South America. So I think that's it. Next slide. That is it.
Well,
All right. Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much, Keith. That was fascinating. Really, really informative. So, we're gonna ask people to put questions in the question and answer or the chat. So go ahead and do that. But I guess I have a question for folks. What kind of equipment do people need? You know, do you need binoculars or birding scopes, or can you do it with the naked eye? Can you speak to that?
So if you go on a nice sunny day and the birds are low, you can see almost everything with the naked eye. Binoculars are helpful for the identification. So if you have a pair, just a pair of standard binoculars, I think the most common type of binoculars is kind of 8x zoom. So that will be good enough for kind of hawk watching at Beamer.
Okay, great. And there is a question here from Kimberly Snar in the chat that says, "Where do red-shouldered hawks breed and nest?"
So they breed and nest probably throughout the Kawarthas area would be one of the main areas into Algonquin Park. But again, that is kind of the very top of their range. I think we do have some breeding pairs around here in the Flamborough area around Beverly Swamp. So wherever there is kind of large tracts of forest still, you can still find them in Ontario.
Okay, thank you, Keith. And there's a question from Marcia. It's also a bit of a comment, but thank you. Now I see, now I have an add to my Ontario bucket list. And then the question is, I don't see the Raptor cheat sheet on your website. Is it available anywhere? We run a young naturalist group, and it would be fun to share with them.
Okay. Yeah, we do. We definitely do have it, and I don't know, Michael, if you want me, I can share it with you, so you can share it with your members, or
Yeah, that's great.
people can reach out to us through the website, and we'd be happy to share it through there as well, the Hawkwatch website.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the participants? Okay, so I think your presentation was so informative that we're okay for questions, but I would imagine you're going to have a lot more visitors now this spring and this season. So thanks again, Keith, for joining us. I know I'll be out there and I'll be sure to look for you, but happy birding to you, and thanks to Hawkwatch and to you for all your great work here.
Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate the
All right,
opportunity.
cheers. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks a lot.